This time we take apart our head to find out why it's always wet in there.
Just throw it out of the window.
Did you find the window big enough?
Hello, it's so good to see you again. I'm Barbara and together with Daniel I restored a historic sailing ship, Flying Coney. We want to live aboard Flying Coney as soon as possible. And since there is so much structural work to do in the rest of the hull, the most reasonable thing is to make a temporary living place in the aft cabin and the wheelhouse while we restore the rest of the ship. We do not need much, but a bed, a galley and a bathroom are the bare minimum. So let's start with the bathroom. The problem with the current head is that it's always wet in there. It's clear that the moisture isn't coming from the pipework, so there must be a different reason. So let's investigate. But before we start ripping things apart, I want to thank all our patrons for your support. And when I say support, I don't just mean the donations, I also mean the great community. We really enjoy our weekly Zoom calls, talking about current projects, sharing future plans, and hearing your thoughts about it is something we really look forward to each and every week. And if you want to become a part of this community too, then join us on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. Speaking about our great community on Patreon, Herman came by to help us with our head destruction. And since the job turned out to be much more work than expected, we are very thankful for that help. And now let's prepare the work area so we don't get the dust everywhere.
There's no need to make it when we removed the interior from the former cargo hold.
Finally!
We found out that the original wooden deck is still in place. This was a little surprise because on top of it there are sheets of metal, so it looks like a steel deck. Our theory is that they left the thick wooden planks in place first to save on costs for insulation, because 6 centimeters of wood is quite a good insulation, and also to save on costs for metal. We think that the steel deck is thinner than it needed to be if it was a solid steel deck without a sub-deck of wood underneath it. On the long run, we do want to renew the whole deck. That means we have to remove the steel deck that is currently in place. That means we have to remove all the wooden planks and to replace it with a nice steel deck, because a steel deck is less maintenance than a wooden deck. And we also have a quote for a new wooden deck, and for the 100 square meters of deck that we have, it's about 200 to 300,000 euros, so that's no options for us. And I also do not think that it's really necessary for a workboat like Flying Coney. We need to remove the current deck configuration because it's leaking and also the wooden planks are rotting. It's okay that they have done this quick fix about 30 years ago to prolong the life of the vessel, but for me this improvisation is not a good one, so we want to do it properly and replace the whole deck.
It shouldn't be too hard.
No, got it.
Okay. Brute force, I like it. Yep, carry it out.
Here you can see the deck from above. You see that the wooden deck is sheeted over with some teardrop steel sheets. And next to the wooden deck there was a gutter. And this gutter is filled with concrete.
it's just wedged in around it, yeah.
Yep.
The problem is that it's interlocking here. Here are the tiles over the plywood sheet, and on this side the plywood sheet is over the plywood sheet, so it's neither possible to get this plywood sheet off here nor that one, so I think I have to remove one
What about
tile line here. Yeah, that could be possible, we can try.
Now get hit, go here. Don't pull it up. Don't way slow, yes?
We are now in the engine room, and here we do have a cutout in the deck. It was probably made to get the generator in. And now, in this cutout, we see how the deck in the engine room is constructed. We have the steel deck above it, then we have the wooden deck, and in the engine room, to make the engine room fireproof, we have a steel deck underneath it. So there's plenty of opportunity where water can travel within this deck sandwich construction. And the bathroom is exactly on the port side above the engine room. So underneath the bathroom there is the wooden deck, and underneath it there is a steel deck. So let's find out where the water is coming from.
Yep, that's okay, great. I'm afraid we have to remove this one. Definitely first before we continue any further with this one. So that we can cut it if necessary. Can do. Okay, it's okay, it's smooth.
We are now on the other side of the bathroom, on the outside of the bathroom, if you will. And here we have the suspicious corner, and there are multiple options how water could enter the bathroom. The most likely one is that water travels along the concrete here, the concrete gutter. But it can also be that there is some rusted through welding, or the water could travel through the wooden deck into the bathroom. Of course, it could also be that the water enters somewhere from above, but it's more unlikely if you ask me. Originally the boat was built with the deck surrounding the wheelhouse, and this superstructure was added later on when the boat was converted into a motor sailor. So when she was a sailing ship, there still was this surrounding deck. We've planned on the long run to lower the quarter deck down to bulwark height, which gives us the best out of both worlds. For a sailing ship, it's better if the sail is as low as possible. So that's one reason why we do want to lower both the wheelhouse and the quarterdeck. But if we lower it down to the deck level, then we would lose all the space that's aft. So that's the reason why we do want to lower it down to bulwark height, because then we have enough space for an aft cabin and we gain the proper steering position on the aft deck. Together with Hermann, we have removed quite a lot of the covering boards on the cabin wall and a little bit of the flooring. So far, no big surprises. And now the next step is to remove the insulation. It's some sort of rock wool insulation. It's not damp, it's not moldy, that's good. But if insulation was manufactured before 1996, it could be potentially dangerous. So that's why we're wearing the masks and why we try to reduce the dust as much as possible. Here we have an old deck drainage that was welded shut, so here it's obvious that this was previously not inside, this was an outside deck. So it's quite interesting to see these pieces of Flying Coney's history. We now see how the aft cabin is constructed. I'm standing on the original wooden deck that was previously surrounding the wheelhouse. Next to the wooden deck there is also the gutter filled with concrete. Then we do have the original bulwark with the bulwark stanchions and the original cap rail. And on top of it, the whole superstructure for the aft cabin, for the quarterdeck, was added. So on the long run we have planned to lower down the quarterdeck. There's a second line surrounding the aft cabin, so that it's here, and that's the height we're aiming for. And we can still keep the old deck. Then we need some stanchions here or a crane from the outside, and we can hopefully lower the complete quarterdeck down to this height. Then we need to fill the gap, weld it all together, and basically that's it. But as always, it will be a much bigger job than expected. And to our big surprise, the steel is in good condition. Even though it wasn't really coated, this is just a factory coating and they didn't bother coating the welds. And we also found out that they just put the superstructure on top of the wooden deck. So here we do have the steel deck which runs through. And they also just put the steel on top of the concrete, and the moisture is indeed traveling on this gap in between the steel and the concrete. Here the moisture comes through. So eventually, when it stopped raining, which will be about, well, hopefully next summer, we can put a layer of Sika in between, and that will hopefully stop the water that comes in. For our temporary living solution back here, you can place the toilet directly on the previous wooden deck here and have an industrial looking bathroom, and that will bring us until we can install a proper bathroom down in the hull. And then we can eventually lower it down. And then we, step by step, becoming closer to a sailing ship. But that's all we have time for today. So thank you very much for watching and see you next time.